everybody seemed to be retweeting my good friend Jory Epstein when she talked to Micah Parsons, who had a quote that, well, we'll just get into it. Stone, please play the sound so we can hear exactly what Micah Parsons
doing God's work of playing the Micah Parsons sound.
Playing the Micah Parsons sound. Micah Parsons on Mike McCarthy and the struggling Dallas Cowboys.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's, of course, going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
You know, that's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, you know, all coaching aside, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But the guys I kind of feel bad for is guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year or on their way out, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for. You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for.
Now, this sounded, it sounded a lot better than it looked when you typed it out, Jory. You did try to kind of explain what you thought Micah Parsons meant, but let's talk about it now. What do you think Micah meant by this, which looked like, when you read the quote, it looked like he was just kind of throwing Mike McCarthy under the bus. I don't really see it that way. I don't think you do either. Talk about Micah Parsons and what he had to say to you.
Yeah, there's two elements of this quote that led to it going viral. The first is Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. That didn't look good in writing,
right.
But I didn't even think twice about that when I heard it or when I tweeted it, because the context there was players have a finite amount of time that their bodies will physically allow them to play in the NFL. Coaches do not have that physical restriction. And so Mike McCarthy is still physically able to keep coaching. Zach Martin's body is probably not going to lead him to play in 2025. He has talked about that and hinted at that. The part that was actually more jarring in the moment was when Micah said that Zach Martin has put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. Mike McCarthy got to the NFL 20 years before Zach Martin. I have a ton of respect for what Zach Martin's done. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler, a 7-time All-Pro. He does things the right way. He's been a leader on that team, never a distraction, which is why it was kind of funny that he got pulled into this distraction as collateral damage. But I think what is challenging is that even if you say Mike McCarthy's never physically done what Zach Martin's done, it's not a very flattering portrayal of your coach. Again, the most generous reading of this is Zach Martin is likely to retire at the end of the season without a Super Bowl, and Mike McCarthy already has his Lombardi. And so in terms of that feeling of hoisting the Lombardi, Mike McCarthy has done that. The problem is, I put this in context of other players who I have either asked directly or been in the presence of when they were asked about their head coach returning. When Dak Prescott was asked after a recent playoff loss, and particularly, I think it was the Green Bay Packers playoff loss about Mike McCarthy's future, he said, well, if his job's in question, mine should be too. I was the one out there playing. I didn't play well. We love Mike. This is not on him. We have to execute. When Jalen Hurts was asked last year in Tampa about Nick Sirianni's future, he was like, oh, is that a question? They're like, yeah, what do you think about it? And he was like, I didn't know that was a question. But Jalen Hurts did not say, I want Nick Sirianni back. And I find it telling when that is not what players think first about. I will also note that even on Sunday night, when I'm asking these questions, I asked this to Micah Parsons, and I asked a very similar question to Jordan Lewis, the Cowboys cornerback who's been there since 2017. And Jordan Lewis said, look, I don't know, but as long as Mike is at the helm, it's our job to fight for him. It's our job to fight during the week, to fight on game days, and to figure out how to translate that fight to wins, which is, quite frankly, the tone I was expecting from Micah. And while the reason I'm not so sympathetic to Micah being responsible for his words, even if I think the clip is probably more what he should be responsible for than the interpretations that the internet had afterward, is this is a player who's been a star for several years, who went to a big program and has a weekly podcast where he talks for over an hour. He is the president of Bleacher Report's Gridiron Football program. This is not a guy who's not media friendly. And if anything, he used this as a way to promote his podcast. And on Monday was like, I'll explain what I meant on Bleacher Report. So I think we should keep that. This was not us throwing a rookie who came from Southern Alabama. If Jalen Tolbert, who played for Southern Alabama, said something like this 3 games into his Cowboys career, and we tweeted that, I would feel a little differently about this. So I don't think Micah's trying to push Mike out. I also don't think he vouched for Mike to stay. But I think what really this kind of boils down to, and this is how I described it in my story, is there's uncertainty in this Cowboys locker room about what Mike McCarthy's future looks like with them, and that is deservedly so. Jerry Jones chose to enter this season with his head coach on the final year of his contract. When you allow a guy to go into his final year of his contract after 3 12-5 seasons, 3 seasons where they made the playoffs, and now they're 3-6, and you're saying 12-5 with playoff exits was not good enough. And now they're 3-6, not going to make the playoffs, and so much has gone wrong, and they do not look like they have a coaching edge. I think it is reasonable to expect that Jerry Jones is not going to renew Mike McCarthy's contract. He doesn't have to fire him. He can just let the contract expire. And so I think that players then shift to this mindset of, well, this is a business. We've seen players and coaches come and go. Dan Quinn, Micah was very close with him. Well, now he's coaching the Commanders, a division rival. And so if you're Micah, you have to get into this mindset of, I'm playing for the guys on the team. I'm playing for who's here. And I can't be like focused on whether Mike McCarthy is here or not. You could say it better, but that's kind of some of the dynamics that I think that are at play.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, but this is what the Cowboys are going to have to deal with the rest of the season, as you alluded to. When you have kind of a lame duck coach, you're going to get asked about this a lot, especially when you might lose out. Like if you look at their schedule, they really could lose out. I don't think they will, but it's going to get ugly for the Cowboys. They are going to get a lot more questions like this. You are going to get a lot more viral quotes, I'm sure, and we'll all be happy as a result.